Hello. What was I said to you? I'm not going to go all formal tonight. Hello and welcome to this broadcast. It's just a bit impromptu, actually, on the back of last night's little Twitter one I did for about an hour and a half that I didn't mean to essentially do, but some really interesting questions came up, and then I thought, well, I'll do another one. And I thought, yeah, Ben can join me, which I thought would be nice. Ben and I were just talking about recordings. Sorry.
Yeah, for those who remember them, or might not remember them, or might have heard of them.
It's called a vinyl.
Yeah, LPs. Yeah, I dusted off the old record player and actually was playing that this afternoon.
Is it the
not too loudly? I didn't really want to disturb the neighbours too much.
Other than the Peter Hanford recordings?
Mixture, actually.
Hello, Tim. Hello,
Kay Mellor, Jay Peters, Brian. Recordings by Kay Mellor, Jay Peters, and Dr. Peter Ransom Wallace. That's who done. Oh,
very nice.
Yeah,
James has got a load in my roof. I presume he means vinyls.
Yeah, he's put Argo, so yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the Argo. A website started doing them again as downloads. The Peter Hanford recordings, and now they've stopped prior to COVID, which is a bit of a shame because there's some cracking recordings out there.
Yeah, I must have a look because I'm sure. Didn't some of them come out on CD?
Yeah,
I know I've had it in the past. I've had some recordings on CD, and I'm not sure where they were from originally. But Argo rings a bell. But I have seen vinyl copies from Argo. So yeah, but I'm lucky. I'm glad that one's not a scratch on it kind of thing. And I've got a Metallic Railway one, so I'll have to dig that out at some point, along with a few Bryan Adams and whatever else.
To go into the style of old Top Gear, we have some news. What was it that James May used to always go on about?
I don't know. I couldn't stand him.
We've lost the feed. Everyone's gone. Anyway, well, that doesn't matter. No, but we have some news. One of these is for sale.
Yes, on Abe Books. Priced at £250.
Yeah, which it's one of those. If I really wanted it, I think it would be one of those where I'm going, might go for that. I think they've gone for more. Whether they've gone for the last one on eBay went for just under 200.
There's me sitting here wanting 2,500 for mine.
Have you got it there?
I have. I've actually got mine.
Hold on. In the name of Awdry and George and the Holy Henry.
No, but I will be putting that up on eBay.
I've got one of them. I've never read
that's going to go, and then that one is going to go.
Never seen that one before.
Yeah, that's the 65th one. This is the 65th anniversary. That's
never seen that one either.
Cover.
Oh,
now
sorry.
This one was as I got it. It's obviously had a loving family because there's ever so slight. You just see the marking on the edge.
Big teeth mark.
Possibly. I mean, actually, the only best bit about this, I suppose, is the
making tracks to great destinations.
Yeah, and then there's some photographs of his handwritten.
Oh, they're nice.
his handwritten notes. Don't show you them all. It's just a snippet, and then I'll tell you, this is one thing that I do like. Everyone sort of assumes that Awdry's sketches were all black and white, but the top ones is.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
And in colour. Then obviously the Derby one underneath. So I'm intrigued now, Tom, because this is a good conversation starter. Wilbert stated there was only one tunnel, and then they cut another one. But the way he's drawn it, just looks like it was always. I don't know.
Hold on, is Henry in the tunnel?
Henry is in the tunnel, so technically it is kind of right because but it's the way it looks, the way he's drawn it. I think it's Chilcompton Tunnel on the Somerset and Dorset. There's two boreholes and they were separate because they were initially it was single track, if I remember rightly, and then another one was built and it is purposely separate for that reason. It would have looked better, but obviously, you know, he himself he admitted he couldn't draw very well. And then
I don't think Awdry was as bad as he makes out.
No, I don't either. And then of course we've got them two as well. The pull along and yeah, so that's really about it. And then but I don't want it. It's in my way.
And you were selling iOS for what, £5, Ben? Is that right?
5,000. It's just gone up. These were I don't know if anyone remembers that he's coming out.
Ben, you know I get twitchy when TV series imagery appears. I'm joking.
Yeah, no.
I had them somewhere.
Yeah, I've only got two. I don't know. Was there 4 made, 6 made? I believe there was more than 2.
I seem to think there was something like 6 of them.
And then there's that one as well. Inside, they both have the same card. Inside, they have he says, trying to gently pull it out, not creasing it. It has that, which is you won't see on the camera, but it's just a bit of blurb. Both of them have, and it's the same on both.
Yeah,
and they will be going.
So get in now, people. It all goes to fund his lovely engine that he's.
It does, yeah. It all goes to a very good cause.
British Gypsum.
Yeah, British Gypsum.
And Bozeman, to forget its full name. I apologise for the noise. It's my dog that's decided that she wants to play. She's chosen her timing very poorly. She's been out. She's had a good run. She's had all this, and normally this is when she settles down, but not tonight. So there we go. Tidmouth Yard. Hello. Question I meant to ask last night. Would the SR have bought anything from the MSR in 1947? I think so. I think you might have put this on the back of my little comment I put in the Modelling the TR group on Facebook. Regarding the... I think they would have bought stuff off cheap. Or even just took it as sort of scrap value, or even be given it. So if anyone who doesn't know, I'll stick a picture in the chat actually. I'll stick it on screen because I think I know how to do screen share now. I've just finished doing some more slate wagons. When my laptop just wakes up a little bit, and I've done 2 as. Hold on a second. Let me just blow this up. I've done 2 of them, which are ex-Corris ones. The most of them are Taliclin Railway wagons. And obviously anything that's a Taliclin slate wagon is going to be a Scarlowy slate wagon. There we go. Hold on. I'll do it better than this. Let me just stick an image in here. So my idea is that the ex-Corris ones, which the TR bought or were given. I can't remember which way it was. Did they buy them, Ben?
I think they did, yeah. Or purchased a few of them.
Here we go.
I think I have a sneaking suspicion when they bought 3 and 4. I have a sneaking suspicion some turned up then, and not necessarily bought, but possibly given.
Okay, so is that showing up now?
That's showing, yeah. Yeah, hey.
That's come out okay. Yeah, so I've done those. Again, it's sort of reading between the lines.
Excuse the pun.
See what I did there?
Badly, but yeah, never mind.
So, yeah, my idea was that they would have bought or given or got them from the scrap man MSR wagons, particularly slate, because at this time in 1947, the quarry is still producing slate up at Ben Glass, so it's additional. And of course, they don't have to be used for slate. As you can see, those ex-Corris ones, they aren't like the TR ones, which tend to be the 3 or 2 bar. You could just easily use them as general goods.
So the other argument as well is they could have been replacements for many that were worn out, and the fact is they're wood, aren't they? They're the ones they're based on are wooden bodied, so there's very little metal on them that's of any value for a scrapman. Now, I'm not sure what scrap prices would have been for steel back in the 40s, but if it's anything like steel prices are today, it wouldn't have been high. It'd been next to nothing. So they might as well, I know the company was wound up, but from administrative purposes, they still would have had to have cleared any debt remaining, whatever. They probably would have got them extremely cheap.
Yeah.
Probably next to nothing, really. Sold as seen kind of thing. But a scrapman would look at them and wouldn't really want to entertain them, to be honest, because there's next to nothing of value on them.
A lot of the Corris slate wagons went to Swindon, I think, for breaking up.
Yeah.
Because it was Western region, obviously following on from the Great Western. My idea was I'd do one that was sort of still MSR livery. I went dark grey because the Corris wagons were dark Great Western grey, so I used the same principle there. One still has MS and it's really drab. The other one, I like the idea that as a cheap, just rebranding, the Scarlery Railway had patched out the MS and just scribed on SR. And then the third one along is a 3-bar Talaclin slate wagon, which were rarer than the 2-bar, I believe. So I won't have overly many of those. So to go back to sort of your question there, Tidmouth Yard, I think they would have bought what they could. Somebody mentioned Cora.
I'm trying to remember where that's mentioned. That turned up later, didn't it? Because it was used as a garden shed.
Cora was bought privately. Well, the Corris van was bought privately, and then I think the person wanted to use it as a garden shed. And I read something that inferred that maybe his wife wasn't too happy. And then it then was gifted back to the TR. It ends up on the TR. But so there we go. Good evening, Heisler. How many wagons did the Talaclin have originally? Oh, God, I don't know, a lot. But I say a lot, but in a way, it's more what did Bryn Edglois Quarry have?
Yeah, I've got to openly admit, hold my hands up. I have no idea.
So that I don't know. I know
it's probably in volume 1 of a particular book that is currently on loan.
Yeah, I don't need it now. I've sold it already on eBay, Ben. It's gone. I did read the numbers massively reduced on the TR. There used to be I'm sure I read about 70 odd. In the late 30s, and by the late 40s, it had dropped to 30 or 20. It was a massive number down to a lot because obviously slate.
It's surprising if you think about the 1930s that they potentially still had that many knocking around, because as a lot of companies found by mid-20s, you had the need for rebuilding after World War I, or just building in general, expansion work had dropped off. Then you had the Wall Street disaster in 28, and everywhere was sort of plunged into recession. And it wasn't until the mid-30s everything sort of started to pick up, really. But yeah, it's they still had that many, considering that they didn't always run many trains either, did they?
I was reading that the slate industry had a bit of a sort of went for a bit of a boom at the beginning of the Second World War because of all the bombing, and then the government changed its legislation and said we will do rebuilding after the war. So it went from being like a demand to back down to nothing within the Second World War itself.
To picking up from 45 onwards.
Yeah. Heisler's put the FR had up to 1,000. I mean, wow. I mean, I imagine that the Talyllyn will never have that many because, of course, the Talyllyn just had the one quarry. It was fairly big, was Bryn Edglois, but of course, the Festiniog you had at its height several quarries at Blanna Festiniog. I think by the time you get to the 50s, it got dropped down to 3. I think there's just one now, I think.
Yeah, I think isn't it the one that you pass on the main road as you drop in over the top, as if you've come from Betsy Coed?
Yeah, which you used to be able to
go around. Yeah, I'm pretty certain my first year I ever visited Wales, I would be about 8, 10, something like that. I visited with my dad and his partner and their family and whatever. I'm certain we visited there. I'm pretty certain we did. But I don't remember much of it. I remember the ride on the Festiniog, because I remember we broke down halfway back to Portmadoc. It was thunder and lightning. Rain was actually hammering down. And the engine that brought us up earlier on in the day was Mountaineer, the Alcove 262. And that actually came and rescued us, took us back to Portmadoc. But yeah, we were on the train for about 2.5, 3 hours. Well, they came and rescued us in the thunderstorm, which is pretty impressive.
As Heisler's pointed out, it'll be Lech Weth. Will be the
one that's running.
Yeah. My late dad always used to comment about. I think it's down in one of when they take you in, and there's like obviously like music playing. There's like a all Welsh male choir singing in the background. It's quite nice. Now I had some quite happy memories there. Yeah. I'll turn off the screen sharing for now. But yeah, so anyway, that's so regarding the point. We were talking about this today, Ben. Golden Eagle Studio Production. Speaking of quarries, the Awdrys have conflicting statements on what the MSR mined around Casney Howin. Wilbert said lead and Chris said slate. So how many mines were around Casney Howin? Yeah, we were talking about this just as I was finishing those wagons.
Yeah.
I think Casney Howin was predominantly slate. The Mid-Sodor has several mines, which you can see on maps. Hold on, let's get a map up. That's probably a good idea. Hold on a second. Modern technology. It's wonderful. Don't want to do that. Hold on a second. Right. We'll put screen. Oh, am I still sharing?
Yeah, you're still sharing. I can still see a certain Reddit.
There we go.
Hang on.
You shouldn't now. It should be.
Yeah, it's the map.
Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to.
So I was looking at the questions and I realised there's a lag. Golden Eagle Studios and production. Speaking of quarries, Awdry's had conflicting statements. Wilbert said lead. I've actually read iOS today because, as Tom rightly said, we were talking about it today. There is lead up there, but he never specifically said it was Casney Howin. Chris said in reading between the lines it was slate. I think it was basically a mixture.
Well, the way I'd look at it,
but when you read iOS and you read the Arsdale Railway, about the Arsdale Railway section, it sort of infers that the old mine at Farquhar Road, which you should see on the screen, that was a spoil mine. So that hints that that had a lead content in, because that was what the ballast was used that kept it weed free. The next one, which is you can't quite see on the screen at Marthwaite. Oh, you can actually. That's granite.
Yeah.
And then you've got another old mine working at Arsdale, which again is very. It's not clear what was there, but it potentially makes out that it could have been lead again. I like the idea that Casney Howin is slate or something more substantial, just to be different.
My reasons why I think Casney Howin is slate. The reason that they relayed it on the Mid-Sodor trackbed was because of the weed killing properties of the ballast that the Mid-Sodor used. They only opened it as far as Arsdale, so it would suggest that those 3 old mines that are in that vicinity are all that they needed. And they never pushed on to Casney Howin. You've got the granite quarry, and anyone who knows ballast is generally made of granite. Well, I suppose it depends, but I know up in North Wales, the line that I also model, compressor, there was a granite quarry that supplied BR with ballast. So I think that within that vicinity, you've got the mines that are produced that the NWR starts using for its ballast. The other reason I think Casney Howin is slate is actually, you could say, well, Christopher Awdry says it is, but we fully admit that we run fast and sort of loose with what we agree with Christopher Awdry. So in this case, I could go, and in that case, it's I'm going to ignore what Christopher Awdry has said. My reason for thinking it is that section of the Mid-Sodor is essentially based on the Festiniog.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. Happily go along with that. But it's just, kind of a shame that he never mentioned which one it was or what it was. But
so that's my sort of thinking on that one.
But yeah, harking back to the granite, I mean, the Southern Railway used some of the constituents of Southern Railway Company were used shale, even pebbles, which is not ideal and good for ballast because it won't interlock. At least with granite, it's sharp, it compacts well, and pebble ballast has been attributed to several disasters over the years. One which was semi-blamed on the locomotive, everything was looked at the locomotive, which was the River class, the 264 tanker, Seven Oaks, I think it was, when it derailed on a Pullman train, and they blamed the rough riding of the loco, and it was sent. One of them was sent to the LNER, where it performed pretty well. There was a suggestion that it could do with extra baffling in the tanks just to stop the surge of water, but it found that it rode reasonably well overall. That still didn't stop the Southern from actually rebuilding them. They became tender locomotives, became 460s. But yeah, no, granite's obviously the best, one of the best stones to use for ballast. Sorry, I've got a really sore wrist from lugging that nameplate around today. I've hurt myself. It's doing my head in.
Get an ass.
If it disappears, it's just literally because I'm filling my cup up and grabbing paracetamol, which doesn't normally niggle me, but it is doing it today.
Incidentally, this map it is a fan edit, but it only adds in things that were missed off, which are railway series. So it's, for me, it is canon. It's railway series. It's not been, because the one thing that's been added is where it says old mine at Casney Howin, because actually there's nothing indicated on any of the maps.
Yeah, the one thing that says in iOS, the mine where it was, but it's actually not on the map, and that was the last mine. That was the reason for closing it when it flooded.
I think slate. And actually, again, you can sort of, in this time period, I like to imagine that this was sort of the last thing that they were holding on to was the Mid-Sodor. It was already having to compete with the Skarloey for slate. Of course, it has its access to the coast with Alsborough. But yeah, the fact that you look at the Mid-Sodor and it's essentially, I know you've got the Ratty in there, but you run from a port and you go to a town nestled in the mountains. It's Fez in that sense, with a bit of Welsh Highland in. Heisler, the FR also served Brooks Granite Quarry in the later years by boarding up inside of a slate wagon. Oh, right, I didn't know that. I must admit, my Fez knowledge is quite poor. I'm learning. And
it is. I mean, I've just bought Little Giants, the book, because I want. I'd seen it at a model show last year, in York model show actually, and I didn't get it then. Looked at it, it's what it's on my wish list, and I've bought that. But I have to admit, my knowledge of Fez is actually very limited, so it's the one thing I'd like to pick up on.
Yeah, I would buy it, but it's a lot of money. I'm not knocking it for that. It's a good book, but
I have to admit, most of the pictures in there are superb quality. Given that a lot of the captions are when they were taken as well, and you think about the camera quality back then, you're talking like 1800s, and they're so sharp and crisp that it's lovely to be able to look at that. So yeah, that's it's superb. Just one comment that's caught my eye: Joseph the Midland 4F. That's where Stanley was at Casney Howard. He was, it's all being answered, but yeah, that's where he was. He was the reason. He was the pumping engine. When he failed, the quarry flooded.
There's one for you, Ben. Golden Eagle Studio Productions. Wouldn't Stanley be overground while pumping the mines out?
Yes, I think a lot of people would have expected him to be underground. No, he'd have been on top. He'd have been supplying steam to the actual pumps themselves, which I would imagine would have been something like an old style beam engine, and that would have been used for pumping out the water. So yeah, he would have been above ground.
So you know what? This is why it's good you're here, because I told everyone something last night on my feed. I said, because somebody said, why wouldn't Stanley have been recovered by the Skarloey Railway? It's a good question.
Simple. Baldwins are awful. No, take that back. Actually, I want to ride behind the one that there's a couple that preserved. One in particular though that I've watched videos on it. Leighton Buzzard. Not sure if it's visited the fairs. I really want to ride behind it actually, but they weren't renowned for running backwards very well. And I think it was the Ashover Light Railway. Someone will correct me. Heisler will correct me, because we had this conversation the other week. It cropped up in the chat. I think they had 6. And I've seen quite a few photographs of certainly Peggy and one of the other ones on the side. So they probably weren't really interested in recovering that one. To be fair as well, it would probably only just be boiler, maybe the frames, but that would have been it. There wouldn't have been any wheels on it, there wouldn't be any motion. Cylinders might have been taken off and scrapped as well. Certainly no cab, no need for it. Yeah.
Tidmouth Yard makes a very good point. Apparently, he's visible in some of the shots of Wilbert's Mid-Sodor layout.
He is, yeah. I wonder how many other people actually spotted that, but he is indeed. Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah,
and
he's on the curve and you see him poking out the shed. I think it was just a nice little thing that he did there, but yeah.
Luke Stables put, Baldwins are fine machines, except for those built for the Great War. They were only for a couple of months at most. Very true. And of course, that's what Stanley was. He was an ex-World War. Yeah,
built for a purpose. With the idea of being as cheap as possible, as useful as possible, as strong as possible, but I suppose a bit like the soldiers, with the potential that they weren't going to have a very long working life, being quite close to the front line. But it's a surprise. Actually, there was quite a few survived the war and went on to other industries. No, they are a fine machine, really. It's just, as I say, that one was renowned for not being too stable in reverse.
I should apologise. Actually, I've just realised I need to put the people's questions up on the screen when we were talking about them. So,
Yeah.
in fairness, Sunshine Tug, I thought it was a 2.6 something, and then it was only when I read Lad a Look in iOS today that he was a 4.60.
Yeah.
And was red. I mentioned this last night because somebody, I think it might have been Callum, commented about, oh, he got a patch of red paint on him. I said, no, he was red. Which Ben?
And this links with a Festiniog, and this was something that I only read when I was flicking through the Little Giants book. In the back of it, there is, I think it's an appendix, might be a proper chapter, but it's about locomotives and the liveries. And the Baldwin that worked on the Welsh Highland Railway was painted for Festiniog red at the end of its working life. And that's why I'm presuming that's why it's red in the illustration.
Yeah. So that answers the question that Stanley's not drowned.
No.
He'll be just a pile of rust on the floor, on the ground, but he's...
Unless they sold him for scrap, but...
Oh, it gets really dark. I'm being saved. I'm being saved. The end.
Yeah.
Maybe what you didn't find out was he actually got brought to the Scarley Railway to be used as a stationary boiler again.
The thing is, iOS says that the quarry, the mine flooded December 46. The railway closed the following month, so you'd sort of expect that it'd be a quick decision, right? Well, we'll just fold anything that's movable, send it down the line so it's closer to a scrap man, and then sell it off. That's how you get rid of your assets nice and quickly. So potentially he's not there. He's now part of someone's Ford Anglia or something.
And of course, it is connected that the fact that with all of this, 47 the Mid-Sodor shut, Festiniog closed 46.
Yeah. And Stanley had already gone before then. The Baldwin, I think it says in the book, was scrapped 44, 42, 44, I think.
Yeah.
They'd already gone.
Sorry. Just, well, of course, forget you can see everything I'm doing. Stop screen sharing for now. That wasn't awkward at all. I don't care. Anyway, so I hope that answers that. That's interesting that he's visible on the on Wilbert's layout. Wow, RWS morbid humour. Wasn't expecting that. Just read. Well, actually, just read Duke the Lost Engine, and Stanley. Anyway, it's pretty dark at the start. I
was intrigued why in the story he's just called number 2. Never worked that one out.
Yeah, and also why the fact is that Falcon came in as number 3.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is he's replaced an older engine.
Yeah.
A bit like some of the companies would do. When you get rid of one, you just transfer that number over to the new one. Makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's all interesting. It's all interesting stuff.
Right, Tom, hold the fort 1 minute. Just while I am.
Right, now he's gone. I'm joking. Something I was going to touch on was what came up last night about Henry 1 and Henry 2. Because I had a chat with Ben earlier about it. And for those who don't know, Ben is he's a fireman on the East Lancs. and he's a driver at Ribble Steam. So he knows his sort of his proper his railway stuff far more than me. And I was talking to him about the whole Henry thing. About what parts, if we go down the route that parts of Henry 2 are in Henry 1, what realistically could have been used. And I think we're both under the sort of idea that very little could be used. So I've come up with my ideas on two things that could be used, which I think's enough. It's enough to sort of believe, it's the same sort of engine. But we'll get onto that when he comes back. He's back now, so we'll get onto the topic of it. He hasn't got his headset on, so he can't hear us. Can't hear a thing we're saying. Now he's putting his vinyl record again. They are good, those. I might have to get a record player just to have a listen to those again. Yeah, I think there was another number 2, and actually you could go down the route of sort of Albert being possibly maybe was the original number 2. You could have 2 Falcon locos on the Mid-Sodor, because that's what the Chorus was. The Chorus had 3, 1, 2, and 3. So you could have that route that maybe that you could have 2 of them, or even 3 Falcons, essentially. So 35. Flying Kipper crash happened in January 1935. Not the date in reading between the lines. Christopher had gone off publication date. January 35. So I'm just reading through some of the comments. Which opens a can of worms. Quite possibly. Sorry, I'm just reading the. If I recall, Albert was number 5, Jim number 6, and Tim number 7. Quite possibly on that. So anyway, hold on a second. Also, since the NW, right, let's just have a ping up here. So, also, since the NWR are technically a region of BR, could BR have forced their logo to be painted on the engines? Look at my models. That's all I can say. That's the reason I've put crests on. I've come up with my own sort of headcanon for it. This is my opinion on this, so I can't say it's canon because I'm not Wilbur. I look at it down the route of, in 1948, the railways were nationalised. All regions had to conform, and actually BR were really strict on this. All had to have the same livery, etc. And they were very much like you were your 4 companies, and now you're one British Railways. For whatever reason, Hatt was able to negotiate it that the locos kept the. He's back now. For whatever reason, the locos were able to retain their liveries, and I come to the conclusion that they couldn't have. I don't see a way that BR would have said you don't have to have our crests on. So that's the reason why I fitted crests onto my locos, and I think BR would have stipulated it from how they were with it. If you think that Sodor's got to fit in with the real world, imagine James or Edward in BR black. Edward would have probably got. Oh, it's a funny one. This it was all to do initially. It was to do with. Is it wheel diameter? No, it's not wheel diameter. It's power classification on the liveries.
Yeah, was it not anything above a Class 5?
Yeah, so
Or
actually,
it might have been anything that was a 4p and above, because I think compounds got black lined out, or some did.
ignore me. Actually, Edward and James would have been black.
Plain black.
Gordon would have been, yeah,
See, the T9s, some of them were ended up with lining, because 30120, which is the preserved T9, which is a 440, I know that did get lined out black with a red and white stripe. So it might have gone on for the duties, because I know at one point it was the fact that if it was a passenger loco or a mixed loco, was lined out, then your top link express locomotives then started to get your green, your blues, then Coronations obviously got red as well. Some got red, some got green.
Gordon, I would say express passenger blue for Gordon. From the fact that A3's got blue, Henry would have got black. He wouldn't have got. I don't think he would have got green because his power classification. James and Edward would have been black. I dare I say lined, possibly, and then.
Well, it'd be ironic. Possibly Edward would have. I'm not sure about James, to be fair. Although he was meant to be a mixed traffic, so
yeah.
And I got away with it.
And then you would have got the tank engines would have all been black.
Yeah.
The end.
With the exception of Toby, the tram engine.
Toby would he would have had black valances with a early
brown bodywork.
And then of course he would have probably got a late crest, which is what none of the others got because they were all scrapped.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go back a little bit. Henry probably wouldn't have got BR green because Black Fives never got BR green. There was some green trials in the early late 40s when they were trialing out liveries.
It was 1948, Tom. They the story was they rolled out 5 Black Fives painted in a variety of colours. So there was a green, red, and then the last engine unveiled was obviously lined out very much LNWR style, to which Rudels is meant to have exclaimed and said some rather curse words when they surprised him with this LNWR looking livery on one of them. But yeah, that was the only time actually in BR service that any Black Fives was seen in any other colour.
Yeah, until you get to preservation, because one did get green that was at Carnforth, didn't it?
44936. I think 806 did as well, briefly. And then 45407 got Furnace Railway red.
Henry the Red Engine, which of course...
Very briefly, which did happen, yeah. Henry and the Express.
I'll put this one up here from Ross Nation. It's because we were talking about this, and this is what when you disappeared, Ben, I wanted to touch on this because this is so Ross Nation says on the Henry 1 and 2 debate, would the original frames of Henry 1 have been reused, or were they too different from a Black 5? Now, before you say anything, I bigged you up before when you were off. I said, Ben is a fireman, he's a driver of steam locomotives, and in fact, is overhauling a loco. So he engineering wise, he knows his stuff far more than me. It's over to you, Ben.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, this is a very short, simple answer. The issue we have is we've got an engine that's doubtful ancestry. We don't know where it's come from, what it's meant to have been. And this is one thing I hate, right? People can argue this and whatever. In my own head, and I'm happy for this, I don't think Henry was a Pacific. End of. I know some illustrations he's portrayed as one, but I'm going back to the first creation of the engines. Wilbert deliberately had a 440, a 442, and a 462. That was the idea. So you could tell them apart, easy identification. He then gets drawn. Was it Middleton that did the initial error, or Payne? But he gets drawn like Gordon. So straight away, you can't tell the difference. iOS, he's described as superficial likeness. As far as I'm concerned, that isn't he's the same. That's he looks similar in some respect, whether it's head on, slightly side view, whatever. For me, the wheel arrangement is a 460. Just so he's different from Edward and Gordon. And I'll go on that because I don't hold that the illustrations are like a photograph, because there's a lot of illustrations. Wilbert even mentions it and said, yeah, some of the illustrations had errors in whatever. So straight away, I think Henry is a 460. He's not a black 5, simple as. So his frames could well be too different to be used. Plus the fact he's just ran into the back end of the train. So if you look at a lot of disasters where that's happened, there's a good chance that the frames would have been scrapped. You've got a twist in a frame, they're a nightmare to even put anywhere near true. You either cut off and put a new section on, like Scotsman had in its overhaul, had quite a large chunk at the front end removed and renewed. To be fair, back then, they were building. They'd have just made a new set of frames. You wouldn't have even thought about reusing the old ones. And it was surprising. Tom, you'll know this one. A1 Pacific was it A1 Pacific, A3 Pacific? Which one was scrapped in the 30s? Was it after the Castle Carry accident? Anyhow, doesn't matter. My point is,
Callboy.
Yeah, I think it was. There was an A3. There's a picture in one of my books, and it's there on the works at Doncaster. You look at it, it doesn't look that bad. From from a repair point of view, they scrapped it because they were still building them. They just, probably insurance or whatever, they scrapped it. New engine came out of that works with that nameplate on that number. They were just, they'd have salvaged anything off it that they could have used, because that would have saved them a lot of cost. But nah, I do not believe 1 and 2 are the same. For the purposes of a story, yes, that's fine. But if you were looking at it logically in a real life scenario, no way. I think at best, you might have used whistle, regulator, handle, maybe a few other handles, injectors if you're going to be that much of a skinflint, but there'd be very, very little number 1 used.
And something I fully admit I'd looked into, and it's been mentioned before, is about, okay, what about the wheels? Could the wheels have been used? Well, we touched on this, that possibly Henry 1 was a 3-cylinder. If he's a black 5, he's a 2-cylinder. So the wheels aren't going to. I'll let you explain better than me.
Yeah, the wheels on a 2-cylinder engine are quartered. So that basically means that if you look where the crank pins are in position to each other, one of them, right hand side leading, is 90 degrees in front of the left hand side. That's so you don't have dead spot in one of the cylinders as it's moving. It's a little bit technical, but you'll easily understand. If you had both crank pins at the same position, when they reach, if you looked at it side on, imagine it's a clock, at the 3 o'clock position, your piston is right at the end of its stroke, which is it's fine, it's great, because at that point, steam is entering the cylinder to push it back. Now, if you stopped at a station and you've got the crank pin either top dead center or at the 12 o'clock position or the 6 o'clock position, your piston is halfway in the cylinder. And at that point, the valves are shut. They do not let steam in or out. Sorry, they let it out, obviously, because you're whichever direction the piston is moving in stroke. You have what's essentially a dead spot. It wouldn't move. So the crank, you move them 90 degrees on the 2-cylinder, so that one cylinder is always getting steam admitted to it, so you should be able to restart. On the 3-cylinder, they're cranked 120 degrees. The A-class, the Gresleys, were actually ever so slightly different. But that's only because the center cylinder was inclined. So that's where the difference is for that one. But they're in the enough 120, so you couldn't reuse the wheels. But you couldn't reuse the axles anyhow. And again, you'd have to pull the wheels off the axle. They've been pressed on originally at roughly about 60 ton to push them onto the axle to begin with. You've got a chance that you could, pulling them off, damage them. So you just wouldn't bother. That's all.
Easiest option.
Easiest option, scrap and build. But you know, and again, there's no. This is the thing, because we don't know Henry I's ancestry. The chances are they could have been a different diameter. And another thing is your distance between the centre of the wheel to the crank pin. If it isn't the same as the Black 5, you're going to have issues with your piston stroke, because if it's different, i.e. it's a bigger distance, the piston's going to go straight to the end of the cylinder. So it's you just wouldn't bother. You're making more trouble than it's worth.
No, I think that's.
And if you're getting a brand new engine, you might as well get a brand new engine. As I say, just put the old whistle on. There you go. Maybe, as I say, the regulator handle.
I like that. For me, one is the sound the engine makes.
Yeah.
One is what controls the engine. Transfer those over, and that's enough for me. Good question came in from Callum Walker. If BR did have slight control over the NWR, why did they let Donald and Douglas get away with one of them escaping, and Oliver escaping with his brake van and auto coach? Why didn't they force them back? Very simple reason. They didn't want them. They didn't want them at all. This is where it becomes a bit of a grey area. Awdry very much makes it clear that it is a region of British Railways. The grey area then starts to come when Hat refers to that he wants to buy engines. It's an allocation transfer from one region to another. It still belongs to British Railways, technically. There's a bit of a theory, actually. You came up with it, Ben, actually, about the idea of what actually happened, and I think Luke helped with it. And essentially, it involves that Hat wanted. We
sort of put it down that Hat wanted not the 812, but the 652.
I think yeah. For those that aren't aware, the number of the engine. What is it? 57646.
I haven't got my book with me. Hang on. Does it say? Basically, Wilbert wrote that Donald and Douglas's numbers were basically at the end of the 812 class.
Yeah.
And he calls them 812s. Now, here we are. I've got the numbers, right? 57646 and 57647. However, the 812 class had finished a little bit before that, and they'd done a slight alteration to them. They became known, I think it was the 652s. Sorry, my head's not with it tonight. Stuff like this I normally get. So, they were getting rid of 812s first because they were older. And a lot of the 652s were still knocking around at that time. Hat puts an order in for 2 engines that he wants. If you're going to allocate anything away, you're going to want to keep the best stuff. So the theory was, we'll give him 1812 that's half decent, and we'll send him a knacker. We'll send him one that can be used as spares, or just sweeten the deal, we'll just send him another one. Hence why 2 engines turn up. Technically he only wants 1. The other one shouldn't be there, it should have gone off in the scrapyard. Actually, to appease him so there's no comeback, you've changed
your theory, Ben. The idea was they were sending him the one, which is 57646, which is Donald. 57647 is Douglas. And the idea was that Donald was going to tow Douglas, we came up with, for scrap.
Did the works. That's probably not what I've got written down. That's why I didn't remember it.
Take this one to scrap. So obviously it gets the one engine. But then obviously the crews work together and take the numbers off, and then it all plays out like sort of how it does. Twin engines is one of my favourites. If I'm honest, I really like. So yeah, I think that sort of sums.
Yeah, and Oliver escaping with brake van and auto coach. Why didn't they force them back? cracking idea.
Because if they'd gone back, it would have just been scrap.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose the only other way you'd look at it is once it's there, would they really go through all the rigmarole of wanting to try and get it back? Because it's a region of BR, if it's doing a service of some sort and it's earning revenue money for BR itself, then you're liable to say, well, all right, then that's fine. And let's face it, if you look at the lineup of stuff that had, you had a wide range of different engines. So they were probably happy to let him have another, well, not an oddity as such, the 1400, there's quite a few 1400s built, but yeah, they would probably be happy that, oh, okay, yeah, you can keep it, it's there now, never mind.
But let's not also forget that we've discussed that that poor Oliver was on the run for 10 years.
Yeah, 1436 was actually withdrawn in.
The number, Awdry was quite clever with this. For both Duck and Oliver, he states the number they turned up with might not be their actual number that they carried, which makes some sense with Oliver. Doesn't really make sense with Duck, because Duck was a transfer. It was a simple reallocation transfer from the Northwestern region. For those who Duck says all this thing about he worked at Paddington, it's all rubbish. Because I've modelled panniers, I've got the pannier paper books which go into the details about the 57XX class. 5741. Yeah, sorry, I've got 5742 as well, because that's was a Welsh engine. But 5741 was based in South Wales for all of its life. So it worked in the South Wales Valleys. He would have a real Welsh accent. Would you?
And 5741, for those who don't know, was actually built in Scotland.
So he started off in
by the North British Locomotive Works. So that's probably why he gets on well with Donald Douglas.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, I reckon Duck just changes his accent. He does a whole like Paddington thing. His natural voice is South Wales, and then when he talks to Donald and Douglas, he goes into Scottish. No, I think. Oh yeah. So regarding 1436, which is Oliver's number, that 14XX was withdrawn in 1958. He got to Sodor in 1968. Well, what's it? It's a long journey. But yeah, again, you've got to take into account that the stories are written primarily for entertainment purposes, and what Ben and I, and others and Luke, we're trying to put it into a real context and get it to work, and generally most of it does. This engine turns up at. I love the story of how Oliver gets to Sodor. However it happened, yeah, BR would not want that engine back. He'd probably say you're welcome to it.
Yeah.
Oh,
although there's one question that I've never figured out is how did his crew withdraw their pay packet every week? Because they'd have been missing. They'd have gone AWOL.
Where's John and Steve? Not seen them for a bit. Don't know. Yeah, family's gone. And also, maybe with the families like in the break van, it was like the whole family could all come together with kids and everything. Oh, I love it. Question from Lucas Nolan. This is quite a good one. You measured the narrow gauge line. Have you measured any of the branch lines, mainly Thomas's? I would really like to know how long it is.
The only one I've measured was Thomas's branch, and I measured it at 17 mile. And when I did the timetable for Tom's Farquhar layout, I used that basis that it was 17 mile long. Wilbert actually mentions that it sounds like it could be 14 mile, because he mentions about Toby's water capacity, saying that if Toby fills up at Elsbridge, that the 14 mile round trip is well within his capacity. Or no, the 14 miles is within his running capacity if he fills up at Elsbridge. I didn't measure that. I didn't measure the Quarry but I think it says 1.5 miles. But I'm certain it's also written somewhere else. It says 5 miles as well, and I don't think 5 miles is right.
I think it's 1.5 miles as the crow flies, but because it's set,
Sorry, yeah.
It has to weave, so actual length is like nearer 5. I think.
Yeah. So no, so that's the only one I've done. Not done Edwards. That would be easy to do. It's not too hard.
But about
which looks like it could be around about the 10 mark, if not a little bit longer.
What could be? Sorry. Oh, Edwards.
Yeah.
I think that's a sort of just going back to the Duck and Oliver thing. That, I mean, we're trying to come up with sort of plan and reasoning on stuff, but I think that hits the nails on the head. The numbers is what Wilbert's models had.
Yeah. So he's just gone with them. It makes sense. He's gone into an exhibition. Wilbert himself probably didn't really want to take the number plates off to put new ones on, or scratch the paint and put in the new ones on.
I would have.
You would have.
I would have done. That's technically my business. That's what I do. Anyway. But yeah. Joseph the Midland 4F. Sounds like a nice holiday. What, 10 years on the run?
No pay, nothing.
That could be Oliver's unofficial biography, 10 years on the run. I like that. Oh, dear. But yeah. No, again, yeah. So that's why Wilbert puts that in about they aren't possibly the number plates that they had allocated. Although you could say, why didn't Wilbert just say to the to Dolby or to John T. Kenny, Peter Edwards, change the number to 57 and have it as one that didn't exist, like he did with Donald and Douglas and Bear.
I suppose though, with them two, you don't see the numbers.
No, you don't. You do in later books. You do see.
No, the BR number. He only mentions one of the numbers in the story because he says we ordered such and such, send the other one back. But you don't see them illustrated.
Oh, no.
Because they've come off.
And it's only in recent years when I've reread them that I realised that you actually do. I wasn't sure if Wilbert kept it ambiguous which was the wrong engine, but he makes it clear that Douglas is the engine that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and Douglas even says in the second story, the missing coach, because he's worried that he shouldn't be there, and he hopes that no one finds out.
I hope the Fat Controller knows I shouldn't be here. I'm kind of made going back. Hold on. Lucas Nolan. Well, how long was Oliver in Barry's and they said Barry Scrapyard? Hold on. I'm getting a bit. Hold on. How long was Oliver in Barrow Scrapyard? I think you mean
Barry Scrapyard.
He's in Barrow Yard, as in Oliver was hiding in the goods yard. Wilbert makes clear that there's the goods yards, which Ben will know this because he lives nearby, although they're not there anymore. It's a supermarket. And
one of the main roads.
The Barrow marshalling yards were fairly big, and Wilbert says it was jointly used by London Midland region and Northwestern region.
Yeah, he doesn't actually mention how long he was there, so you could presume he just literally got there. Because I would imagine that it's not like you could really hide in there. They were constantly in use, even for a town the size of Barrow. There was 24 hours movement in there due to the shipyard right next door, and then you had the steel and iron works, which was just to the north of the station, and along with quite a few other industrial.
I would say
industries really in the area. So at best, he'd probably only be there. Well, you'd see him in the daylight, so you could take it that he arrived late evening and they sort of quietly put him somewhere just out of the way and sort of wondered what they'd do to him or do for him the next day.
Isn't there an inference that he's cold? Oh, no, it's not. We've got no coal and no more steam.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that he's not got any. Yeah, because I was going to say a week maybe, but actually someone's going to spot him. You know, a 14XX.
and an auto coach. They're not kind of hard to miss, really. And as I say, in a busy yard, he's gonna. Chances are he'd be in the way.
Yeah, wagons don't just sit there never to be moved. Really, they are going to be. And he's got to be somewhere nearby that obviously Douglas hears him when he, when he's. And actually, he hasn't been there long. It refers to a hiss, so he's got steam.
So he's in steam, yeah.
So he's I reckon maybe even that day.
The slight irony is maybe he's gone past the the motive power depot, hoping to like creep back a bit later on for coal. Because from the direction he would have come in, he would have passed Barrow sheds, which were down at that end.
Yeah, I don't think the illustrations are based on Barrow. I think sadly, which would have been.
To be fair, though, you could argue that they might have been, but they're so close up with the loco themselves that you can't tell.
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen photographs of the area, but a lot of the photographs are actually from high up looking down.
Yeah.
Any photographs from the down looking up can look totally different. So no, he wasn't there for very long, and then thankfully Douglas turned up.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history, yeah. Very much so. Yeah, I was just looking and reading between the lines to see if anything had been written, and it hasn't.
To answer the regarding the supermarket, it is a Morrison's. For those in the UK, you will know what a Morrison's is. So, yeah, it's very, very.
For those anywhere else, it's like a Walmart, but slightly smaller. Not as much stuff in it.
Yeah, big yellow sign.
Yeah.
It's called an Oliver's.
Yeah.
So.
But right next door to that Morrison's in particular, the old station building for Barrow Strand Road still stands.
Oh right.
Yeah, I've always sort of liked the idea that if I ever won the lottery and serious amount of money, I'd love to buy it and put the track back.
Somewhere
because there's a lot of wasteland at the back there as well. So
somewhere for your engine to live.
Yeah, a bit closer to home. Well, apart from the bits that are already next to me. Anyway.
Tell you what I was going to ask you. Can you see the sea from your house?
Can I see the what?
The sea.
No. Oh. I'm in a bit of a dell. Even if you're in up the castle, you can't see the sea from the castle.
Oh, you've ruined it. I was about to say you could see Sodor from your house, but
no. I've got a Rudigate Hill behind me. There's no chance I can see over that.
But in fairness, you are.
And I'm looking the wrong direction out the front of the house, so.
But in seriousness, Benny's not that far from Sodor.
No.
Like no. We crossed over Jubilee Bridge.
In the most horrible of weathers.
Yeah, and then we turned round and came back.
Yeah. Couldn't see anything. Wind was blowing a hoolie and it was raining. Yeah, there we are.
It's weird that whenever you try and look out from Barrow, you can't see it. It's just always covered in fog.
Either that, it's like Atlantis, and it's underwater.
Comes up at specialist times. Sort of thing. Yeah, Sodor sunk. Yeah, we can pretend it's on maps now because Wilbert says they kept ignoring it.
Yeah, funnily enough, where I work, I still can't see it from there. I'm right next to the sea there.
You are? Yeah. Let's be honest, Ben, you did say if Sodor was real, you probably live there and commute.
Yeah, too right I was. In fact, if it was real, I wouldn't work where I do. I'd be working somewhere else.
And if it was prior to 1977, you'd have to get the train.
I would, yeah, no road bridge. Better still.
Or prior to 1915, no bridge at all.
You'd have to swim it and get a ferry.
Just work on Sodor and forget about it.
Yeah.
Oh, you'd work on railway.
Yeah, too right I would.
NWR. Can imagine crews. I can imagine engines just wouldn't like you.
I'd be sacked. Certainly would be.
You pathetic engine. Imagine when Gordon's stuck on the hill, like when they're trying to reason with him, you'd just be going, "It's fine." You'd be there. You'd be going, "I've got the gas axe. I've got cut you up."
Now you see that little tank engine that's got 6 wheels. I prefer that.
What do you mean? What do you mean? No, that I think you're rubbish. You're lazy. You're idle. Oh, you. You know, I wrote that little story, didn't I? That involved you and Luke on James, where James goes hydraulic and gets water in his cylinders and won't stop. I won't say whose fault it was in the story. I just remember that I wrote that you were running after it, going, "Come back, it's the engine."
Yeah, considering I don't like James.
Yeah, Ben doesn't like James. I can't say he's a particular favourite of mine. Was my first toy was James, but yeah, not particularly. But then saying that, I sort of like them. I like them all. I like it on you know the interview with Wilbur that he does when he when Ringo's on the breakfast TV.
Yeah,
I think it's TVAM. I think it's on, and the woman who's interviewing him just doesn't have a clue, and then she says, "Am I right that the engines were named after friends of your son?" Which has never been written anywhere, and Will just goes, "Oh no." Names that came into my head, and it's like I really just thought, I'll just never seen someone more unprepared for. And then she mentioned something about like as if Clive Spong's been the only artist, and then Wilbert goes, "No, we've had 3 more before, or 4 more," because he obviously was referencing Middleton.
Yeah,
but I find it hilarious that interview by. He's like, and also Wilbert's having none of it because she says something like, "How did it all start?" And he goes, "I've been asked that question for the last however many years." I'm also, as soon as Ringo appears, it's like, get out of the way, Reverend. I want to talk to him.
Yeah, well, we've got a Beatle here. Let's talk to the Beatle.
Yeah, but I like how Ringo was very complimentary about the books. But yeah, no, it's good. So as we were saying before, if you want a copy of this, 250 quid on eBay.
Or be really kind and buy mine for 2,500.
That's a bargain. You're getting it off, a man who owns it.
Yeah, said man who still has a lot to do on it.
Yeah, no, I think you're getting a bargain, people.
I'll throw in reading between the lines as well.
Callum Walker, I'd be Henry's driver in the Flying Kipper.
Rather you than me, mate.
Rather you than me, mate, because in fairness, there's no way a driver would survive that incident. I know in the story, everyone always clear in time, but in fairness, because they actually, he never mentions the crew. He mentions who get out of the. He mentions how
he does. It's Henry's fireman who ends up head first in the snow. If you read it properly, it's because it's the fireman off the train who's waving his mug at Henry, going, "You stupid great engine, you spilt my cocoa," and all the rest of it. So the fireman, they all manage to jump off in time. Those in the brake van get catapulted into the air,
of course they
and land in such a deep drift of snow that they are fine and safe.
By the time one thing, it's very early morning. it's still sort of dark-ish. They wouldn't see that goods train. And if you think of the force of going straight into that, it's not good. I mean, in fairness, you look at a lot of steam accidents that happen where an engine goes over or something. The crew don't tend to survive.
No.
There's no airbags on a steam loco.
No, not very many. That'll be norm. Unless you've like smacked your crewmate. Got hidden behind him. You stand there.
No, fireman looks out and goes, "You're on your own, pal," and jumps out. What?
Oh,
Bang.
okay. Bang. Yeah.
But,
saying that though, if they do all, if it was real, I think I wouldn't mind experiencing what Henry One was like as an engine.
You be determined as fireman. I'll make you steam.
Yeah, I'll make sure you're gonna move. Yeah, and then just blame the engine when it all goes wrong. The usual thing.
Couple of questions. One that came in was the £250 iOS. It's on Abe Books. It's not on thingy. Western Didcot boy. So if the NWR was operated by BR, why wasn't Edward withdrawn when he was left in the shed? Surely he was being used for revenue-earning service and therefore wasn't worth anything to the company. Well, first of all, it wasn't BR at that point. It's the Northwestern Railway. The book set in 1923.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's sort of like a retcon thing because for years you get the impression that every year that the book has come out, that was the year it happened in, or the year previous to what it was published in. But even so, as Tom was about to say, am I right? It wasn't still BR, because BR didn't come into existence to the 1st of January 1948.
Which Wilbur acknowledges in the foreword to James the Red Engine.
Yes, he does, yeah. So then you get the impression, perhaps that's when the BR period started, from James the Red Engine onwards. But then, of course, when he wrote iOS, it's retcon. So it isn't. So basically, you get quite a large period between troublesome engines and then, come on, Tom, help me out here. What's the next one after troublesome engines?
Henry the Green Engine.
Henry the Green Engine. Yeah, sorry. Which iOS says it's, of course it is. Happens in 1935 is the accident. So straight away, you still haven't got through the war period. You still haven't got to 1948 until the following book.
And the point is that the fact that Edward's just been left at the back of the shed. The NWR has always tended to have locomotive crisis. I think the way that Wilbur would sort of interpret it is that a lot of the engines you see are on loan, or not even on loan. They've just worked in from the LMS.
Yeah.
And it's a case of maybe maybe Edward needed. Again,
I think if he had done iOS first before any of the books, it probably would have made a lot more sense. Because he was writing them for Christopher, wasn't he? So he wasn't as if he had even thought about the whys, the wherefores, and what was actually happening. It was a story, an entertainment one. So logically, it's like you wouldn't really leave an engine in the shed unless you're doing work on it. And then once you've done work, you'd be straight out sending it, doing something somewhere. Doesn't matter what. You would then start getting your use out of it. It's an asset. Any asset that's sitting there doing nothing isn't making you money. So from that point of view,
also,
which is why the later stories start getting better in many respects, because you
when you look at the first book,
from a whole point of view, you can follow them more logical.
And the first few books I've written for a younger age group, and there's some things that I don't. My idea is if it's a reality, things do sort of play out as they do in the books, but there's certain bits of text that don't make any sense. The driver and fireman almost make it sounds like that they choose Edward today.
Yeah.
which in reality they don't. They will have been rostered to Edward, and for whatever reason, Edward is going to be used. It could be a case that he's not being used for some time, but for whatever reason, Edward is going to be rostered that day. So it still works. It still works in the text that, would you like to come out today? Oh, yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but it's already planned. It almost makes it sound like, again, it's a children's book. The crew have thought, those engines are horrible to poor Edward. Take him out instead. He's got a 20-coach train that he won't be able to haul, but we'll take him out instead. Callum Walker's who actually operated Sodor, the LNER, the LMS, or who was it?
Northwestern Railway.
Northwestern Railway.
Yeah.
When would the Second World War take place in the series? Between Henry the Green Engine and Toby the Tram Engine, because Toby the Tram Engine is set 1950, 51.
51 he turns up, because 68221 came out of service in, I should know this because it's in my book upstairs, March 51, and he wasn't, the real 68221 wasn't cut up until July 51. Which I would imagine he would have been, well, the 68221 would have been stripped for spares to keep the rest of them running, because the last J70 was 1955, August 1955. I've got photographs of it at Stratford Works. No rods, no valences are taken off. You can see that there's no coupling rods, there's no motion, and it was getting ready for being scrapped then.
I thought you were going to say 1955. I know, because I was there. I was like, you're not that old, Ben.
No, I've got quite a few photographs of that one. It was 68222, which was the last was beaching up well local.
Callum says, was it private during the Big Four? Well, in the Awdryverse, it was the Big Five. It was one of the four railways. The NWR is a bit like the Great Western. The Great Western existed before the grouping of 1923.
Yeah, 1923, yeah.
Existed, and then in 1923 it still existed, but it actually took on some railways that it didn't originally own, like the Cambrian, for example. So it's the same with the NWR. The NWR existed, and then it came into be as a railway in its own, as one of the other, probably the smallest of the, yes, definitely the smallest of the four.
The five.
Here's a good one from Callum. Do you think they were painted black during the war? Yes, they would have to be by law. Hence, it's one of the reasons. One, Awdry was a pacifist, and second,
I'm gonna just trivia up, not by law, but just by economy. There was some engines actually finished the war still in their LMS colours. They just, because they didn't end up going for a general overhaul at Crewe, Horwich, or wherever, that they actually still finished the war in the same colour they were as it started. And it was a case of, if they didn't need to repaint it, it would have gone out as is, just depending on what was needed. So there was some engines did sort of see the war out, very mucky, very grimy, but with LNER, LMS, or whatever, still adorned on. If it had gone through an overhaul, they would have been black. Yeah, it's just the economy measure.
Economy, because of money. It's simple as that. Because wasn't the railways sort of taken into government ownership during the war?
Yeah, it's a similar operation to what they did in the First World War, which was after the First World War. That's why you have the big four companies, the grouping, and it was.
Ben, just to say, carry on. I'm going to be honest. I'm nipping to the loo. But carry on.
Yeah, trying to give a train of thought, but back in. Yeah, you had the pre-grouping companies. There was 125 companies that amalgamated to become what we know as the Big Four: Great Western, Southern, London North Eastern, and the London Midland Scottish. Then during really, it was to stop monopolies. It was to not monopolies. It was to try and make things more easier for the public for getting around. That was one of the reasons why they did the grouping. So there wasn't, three railways companies all competing for the same traffic. The idea is, well, you amalgamate them, and then slowly they would thin out the tracks that they don't need. World War II came along. And thankfully, we still had a large railway system, which meant if one railway line was bombed, you generally could still get to your destination by a different route. At the end of the war, with so much that had gone on, and the government came up with a nationalisation scheme, which was they just amalgamated everything. It became under government control, owned by the public, and they also nationalised quite a few industries as well. Steelworks was one of them, coal, National Coal Board, as well as the railways. But yeah, it was a way of, they needed a way of controlling movement of goods around the country to where it was needed, and not only goods, troops as well. And so there's a couple of famous posters. One in particular said, but basically the gist of the poster was, don't complain about delays for your journey. It's basically guns and troops before passengers. And yes, so the government took over so they could have control at moving what they needed to around the country.
And there's your answer.
Yeah, rather rambled answer.
And I've only heard the end of it, so I
yeah.
Something to show here. I was hoping we may have been joined tonight by Mr. Ryan, because he's recently won one of these, another one of the Holy Grails of Awdry sort of merchandise. If anybody, I mentioned this last night, but I'll do it again because there's some nice stuff in it. This is the surprise packet. This was brought out instead of book 26. There was no book in 1971. It was the first year there had been a gap in the railway series since
46, 47?
Yeah,
47.
There was 2 years between Thomas the Tank Engine and James the Red Engine. So this came out instead. The best bit of this, ironically, mine is missing a sheet in here. And I don't think it's a case of when I bought it that someone had not got it, because mine came with 2 extra sheets of a different one. And it now sort of makes sense that that's why I'm missing it. But this is glorious. Look at that. Just think it's a cracking picture. As I said last
year, psychedelic for the 70s.
Oh, let's go Art Deco. Art Deco, shall we say? No, you're right. It is rather psychedelic. Yeah, no, I know. But it is 1970, 71. But
Tripping from me.
I think it's a cracking image. Yeah, I just think it's a really, really nice.
Hang on, Tom, keep holding it up just 1 second.
Apart from I don't like the fact that they don't have lamps.
Yeah, that's.
What are you doing?
I'll tell you in a minute. Just stay with me 1 second.
My arm's aching.
Tough, you can wait. Right, 70.
Have you found a poster it's based on?
Oh, no, wrong page. I wish I could read properly. I've got my glasses on and everything. Can you believe that? Oh, that says hand lamps. That's better. No, wrong page. Still wrong page. Crying out loud. Aha. Yeah, you're right, Tom. You can put it down now.
What's all that about? What, the lamps? Oh.
I was intrigued to see what Thomas was denoted as.
I could have told you that because it's on the surprise packet. It tells you. It tells you what the lamps are. Yeah. So actually, Gordon is Express head codes. That makes sense. Thomas is
D.
A third train fitted with continuous brakes.
Yep.
So he doesn't just pull out Annie and Clarabelle. There's some quite nice pen drawings as well. If I could just hold these up here of the engines. I prefer it if they were sort of coloured in.
Preferred it if he'd actually finished the wheels off.
I know. Yeah. If I could take these bits out. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm being pedantic. Stop it.
Hold on. Let me just. Gordon, Henry, James got no wheels. Mark. There. Right, so I'll put them back away now. But yeah, it comes up very rarely, and Luke managed to pick one up on eBay last night. I'll tell you what, I did mean to check. That Chivers Edward Thomas 009 kit's sold tonight. I'm just intrigued what it went with. I didn't bid on it.
I'll tell you now, Tom, because I've got it up. Oh, please, the laptop spin.
Interesting that it's not showing on my watch list. Oh, I wasn't watching it. I just realised.
Yeah, it's all right. I was.
It was at £74 when I last checked.
Right, it went for.
Suspense.
I'm lying because I obviously didn't.
It's fine.
Hang on.
I'll
Stupid boy.
Edward Thomas 009.
All right, no, I've got it, Tom. It went for 74.41.
Why on earth did the Chivers number 3 go for 200? Now, can you see what the Chivers Edward Thomas, Sir Hayden went for? Because they were selling that as well. Oh, Teignmouth Yard. Sir Hayden went for, why so much for Sir Hayden? Yeah, I know. I was just saying about the 250 for the one last week. I would have probably bid on Peter Sam Edward Thomas if I'd known it went for that price. What's really niggling me about that is that the seller is the actual person that makes them, and that they're not selling them at a price. They're just selling them as auctions, and that really annoys me.
Yeah, Tom, Tallyclin Railway large blueprint drawings by 6 of for Edward Thomas went for £2.20.
Did you buy it?
No, funnily enough, I was outbidded by 20p. I wasn't really watching them. And for those who are listening, it was actually for a 5-inch gauge. The drawings were to make a 5-inch gauge Edward Thomas, which I have seen one actually run. Well, yeah, I have. I've seen a 5-inch one. I've seen a 7 1/4 one as well, which was home built, which is pretty impressive. It was probably a Blackgate's drawing or a Martin Evans drawing, I think. I don't think the 6 sheets were enough. I think the actual pack should have 12 sheets. That was another reason why I wasn't bothered that I didn't.
There was a 009 Russell. There was. Some people may not be aware of this. Russell spent a long time at the Tallyclin. Not running, because different gauge.
Go on, Tom. Was that during the 60s?
Yeah, it was an early arrival.
And from 1970, 74 at least onwards, it was parked next to my engine at Carnforth.
Really?
Yeah, it moved to Steamtown Railway, Carnforth, when Steamtown was a museum, and it was parked in the shed, undercover, and there is photographs of it back to back with British Gyps.
They are people.
So it was on its own set of tracks, but it was. Then you look at the size of Russell to the size of mine, and mine didn't dwarf it by much. Russell was a big loco. Yeah. Even after its mods to try and make it fit up the Festiniog, it was still too big.
Because the Festiniog gauge is the more common 1 foot 11.5 inches.
Yeah, it is, but it was the fact it was too big, too tall, too wide.
Oh, right. Sorry, no, I'm just mentioning it for comparison to the TR for anyone who's not sure.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no, I wasn't clear. Whereas the TR is 2 foot 3 inches. So there is a about nearly 4-inch difference. Hence why Prince can't run on the Tallyclin, if anyone's ever wondered, because they're different gauges. Question from Lucas Nolan. Interesting one. And yeah, I was going to touch on this. Were either you going to try and bid on the operating of the Reverend's train layout? and go into the
No.
study. No, I haven't got any intention to bid on that. I have donated something to the TR, but yeah, I've got money set aside for things, and Ben's got money set aside for things, but it's great that it's all, I think it's at 305. It was when I last looked. The one that actually both of us would love to do, and hopefully will happen for me when I start volunteering, was was it riding all day on the footplate of driving number 1?
Yeah, driving number 1 with the vintage set, which would be a rarity in itself. They've already said that they don't use number 1 for driver experiences that often, so that one would be the one to go for. And the last time I looked, it was £375.
That's what it was when I saw it.
I'd really love to, but I just can't. I can't quite justify it, unfortunately.
No.
If we weren't in this period of instability worldwide, and I was working properly, I mean, I'm still working, but I'm not in work, I'd be doing all the overtime I could grab just so I'd be able to bid for it and do it. But yeah, so whoever wins that, fair play to him. But the thing is, I wouldn't want to drive it all day. I'd want to go on the shovel and drive it, and then I could say I've done both sides.
Firing's more fun, isn't it, Ben?
There's a lot more going on. I seriously think that
you burn more calories firing than you do driving.
Yeah. You just sit there and you drive. You don't have to do much. No, there's a lot of responsibility to drive, but firing, there's certainly a lot more going on. It's a really good balancing act, getting your pressure right, your water level right, firing when you need to, making sure you don't have too big a fire coming into the station, so you're not blowing off and wasting steam. If you've got a cleaner with you and you let them do a bit, you're watching them, you're watching for signals. You just basically, you're the general lookout when you're not engaged in the cab. You're looking down your side of the loco because you're an extra pair of eyes and ears for the driver. Certain curves. If it's a left-hand drive engine, you go around the right-hand bend. You want to be looking out as long as possible for the driver because he can't see past that boiler. So yeah, it's certainly a balancing act, and it is good fun, very much good fun. But yeah, driving's good as well.
Speaking of which, Joseph, the Midland 4F, has said, "I'd love to drive number 6." Ben, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I can safely say I have only a short distance. The Talyllyn Railway do. You might know this. They do driving for £10. So whichever engine they have that day in the yard at Wharf, you drive from Wharf Station up to Pendray and back for £10. And I've been on number 6 and I've been on number 2. And number 6 is, Awdry nailed the characters. Wilbert really nailed the characters. And then their characteristics very well. Number 6 with the short wheelbase, it does rock side to side. It's very pronounced, which makes it an interesting engine. And I think that'd be another engine I'd love to do a full length ride on, see what it's like when it's actually pulling carriages, to see whether that action settles down or whether it's as pronounced or more. Wouldn't be more so, I doubt it, but it's it's interesting. But it was so quiet as well. I'm trying to think which year it was I drove it. I don't think it was too long out of overhaul, and it was in the livery for Duncan, just without the face on, which made it a bit quite nice, actually, quite touching. And I think it was 2011. That sort of seems to ring a bell. But it's a lovely engine, really, really quiet, and it was enjoyable.
Stanley 10 has said, is that the £10 drive actually a thing? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's actually a thing. Yeah. When you go to the ticket office, you pay £10, and then It doesn't matter what time you go. You can do it in the afternoon if you wanted to. I've always made the point. Me and a friend of mine who lives in Kendal called Dave. When we haven't been to many railway galas for the last few years now. I suppose with volunteering, and time to. But wherever we used to go to a gala or an event, we'd always try and get there before it started so that we could get a timetable, look and go, right, what engines are running or what trains are running, which ones are we going to get? We plan our day out. So, of course, we'd done the TR a few times by this point over the years. So we turned up and they were advertising. We got there about half eight in the morning, so they weren't even open. There was about 2 volunteers knocking around. And sure enough, they were saying, oh yeah, we're doing the driver for a tenner. And of course, we were the first ones there, so we were the first ones to get our ticket for the train ride. And so we did the first train ride up, down, and then after that we headed across and did our driver for a tenner. And then, potted around in the museum, had a few more rides, and then went home. So, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing.
How long do you get?
Yeah, it's only up to Pendray and back.
Okay.
So, as I say, it's a short distance, but it's the fact that you can say you've done it. You blow the whistle. They leave it to you. They just tell you what to do. So if you've never been in the cab before, you don't know what the controls are. It's not a problem because obviously they don't want the engine to be broken and stuff like that. But they just tell you what to do and they leave you to it.
That's pretty good for £10. That's quite a bit of distance. It's not like Trundle here back.
Yeah. It's good, and you're going up a hill as well, so that's interesting. Going back down, you've got to use the brake and stuff. So there's a little bit going on. If you've never been in the cab of a steam engine, a working engine, it's great. It really is. And surprising that it's actually not a lot more railways don't do it, to be fair, because it's an extra little bit of income, really. But no, it is good fun. And if you ever get a chance, do it. Do go and do it. Whether it's at the TR or whether there's any railways that are near you might do it. So.
Tenley 10 says, I remember back in 2013, my parents bought me a footplate ride for the day in late December. Got to drive Douglas, go around the museum and in the work shed. It was great.
Someone else who's experienced it. Yeah, it's a great little engine. It really is. I said Andrew Barclay. I like Andrew Barclays anyhow.
Which Ben's loco is. Which doesn't look like Douglas. It's not much bigger, but that's how.
It's probably not much, but yeah, it is one of the smaller standard gauge engines. That's for sure. Tiny in comparison.
I know. I've done it before, but let me just get a picture up of.
The nice thing is, I can say mine's rub shoulders with the likes of Green Arrow and Flying Scotsman and Sir Nigel Gresley because it's shared the same shed as them at Carnforth over the years.
I'm going to put this picture up. It's that one that I had to play around with to try and bring the colours out a bit better. This is Ben's loco, and Ben, it's you on the footplate, isn't it? No, it's not. It's not.
2 words for you, Tom.
Now. We don't swear on Awdry Corner.
You said we were going to swear. You're inferring I'm not.
Oh, sorry. I've just put it in the wrong place then. Hold on a second. So this is an Andrew Barclay. As you see, it doesn't look like Douglas. I wonder what the difference in boiler diameter is, actually. Right, let's hold on a minute. Let's go back into screen share.
Now you've said that. While Tom's trying to figure out what technology does, folks.
Oh, it's done. There we go.
I was going to say. Yeah, 1967. Worked at Kirby Thorne near Penrith at Gypsum Works. It was named Ken Bozeman. It only got the name British Gypsum after it was preserved and it went to Carnforth Steamtown Railway Museum as it was known then. Stayed there till 2005, was never used in preservation. They did steam it in the early days because it turned up at Carnforth with 3 other Andrew Barclays, and they steamed them all to find which one was the better one, or which ones were the better ones, so they could run the shuttle service instead of using the big engines all the time. And mine was found to be mechanically tired. That's probably the politest way I could describe it. And yeah, so currently it doesn't look anything like that. But that one is, as I say, 1967 was when that was taken, and it came out of service in 1969 because it was replaced by a diesel.
But yeah, so there's Ben on the footplate in his nice white overalls.
Funnily enough, I do have a pair of white overalls, so I might be able to recreate that at some point.
And if anyone's wondering about why is it like got all that white all over it, that is gypsum dust, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
it was actually quite a nice shade of green with yellow lining. The lining itself was quite thin, about half-inch lining, something like that.
It's
around the water tank. And I only know that because it's the red paint that was on it in preservation, or on it in some bits, was put on in 1970. It's never had a recoat since, so of course it's peeling off. And when I bought it and brought it back to Preston, when we actually started taking bits off and having a look, you can see the original green paint coming through. Tom, if I actually send you a picture, can you share it?
I can.
Just
So you see, just to point out, no matter what modelling I do, no matter what magazines it gets put into, I will never top Trump Ben, because he actually owns a real locomotive.
No, I don't. I don't own it. I don't own it.
It owns you.
It owns me.
I know what you're going to send me.
Do you?
Would it be the thing that terrifies me?
No, I'm not going to be that cruel.
Okay. Right, let me open
Not yet, anyhow.
Hold on.
No, I'm not sending.
Right, I'll turn off screen sharing. There we go. And I'll just
answer another question. I'll be a minute. Laptop's been slow.
Answer another question. Ask us a question.
Quick, keep him busy.
Do we commune with Awdry? Yes, he talks to us often. He says, "Get your finger out." No, it'd be nice when things do go back to normal. You know, get down to the TR, get down to East Lancs again. Both of us.
Yeah. Get down to the East Lancs. Get down to Ribble.
Go and support your local heritage railways, because they're going to need it.
Yeah, in every way, shape, and form. All right, sent.
Yeah, I've got it. Okay, here is Ben's locomotive, and it's moving, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Not its own thing.
Rarity.
Right. Share screen. Chrome tab. There we go. There we are.
Yeah, that's on the M6 motorway coming back north from Cannock. It was at Chasewater Railway. And I'm just trying to think what I've got in my house. So that's on that photograph. Sandboxes. I did have the bunkers, but they're at my uncle's, along with the cab and the water tank. The bottom end's at Ribble still, where it lives. I've got the connecting rods and the coupling rods there. Well, the coupling rods are in my conservatory, taking pride of place. The nameplate's in the garage because I'm currently scraping that off. See, that was the thing. When it was preserved, the nameplates were taken off. I don't know where one of them is, but the other one was kindly donated to me. I got in touch after I bought it. I got in touch with British Gypsum, the company itself, and because the site's still open. And I got this lovely email back by one of the members of staff, and they said that they had found the nameplate. They weren't so sure what they wanted to do with it anymore. It used to be on display in one of the offices, and they said that I could kindly have it if I wanted it. So I said, yes, please, and they sent it to me. So, yeah, I'd love to know where the other one is. But I'll take a copy of this anyhow, so it will run with two. But it was named Ken Bozeman after the last works manager when it was an independent company before it became part of British Gypsum. And Ken Bozeman was the last member of the family to work for the company. And it was actually his family who started the gypsum minings at Kirby Thor in 1889, I think it was. I've got the newspaper article as well. They actually sent me a copy of the newspaper article with it in and some photographs. So,
10Lee10 says, "Is she yours?" She is Ben's. She just
no, she's mine. Yeah, paid for her outright. Like
Heisler says, "Where's the boiler?"
The boiler's in Colin McAndrew, and I ended up with Colin McAndrew's boiler, which you can see in front of the buffer beam. That's the inner firebox, and the boiler's actually on the swan neck behind the cab of the truck. So behind my cab, you can just make out the boiler, which is, not going to be used, to be honest. It's by the time I've cut all the old metal work out that needs replacing, it'd be cheaper to go new, which is the route I'm going. So I've had a boiler drawing to modern day spec already drawn up for me and everything. So it will have, the idea is it will have a new boiler. Same dimensions and everything as the old one, it's a new signed off drawing. So, and mine was the only one, we believe, that was fitted with a steel inner firebox. The rest of them were copper, because I have a copy of the original drawing of the boiler, and there's only one loco number on it, and that's mine.
For those that aren't aware, most locomotive fireboxes are made of copper.
The inner one. Yeah.
Presumably, am I right? Because one, it conducts heat very well.
Yeah.
Hence, it's used in electrics. Hence, it's used in electrics. The downside is it's more expensive.
Yeah. Now, the inner firebox, I've had it looked at by a couple of people. They basically, both of them came with the same conclusion. It would go again apart from one side of the firebox. And you think, oh, it's only one side. It's not a big firebox, but that one sheet of copper would cost the same as making a complete inner firebox out of steel. Therefore, it sort of made my mind up rather quickly which way I was going to jump.
What were the stays like on the firebox?
There wasn't any, because when I picked it up, they were already taken out. So the side sheets of the outer firebox, there was quite a lot of wastage in the metal. It was very thin towards the bottom. Basically, the boiler was life expired. The firebox side, one side might have gone again. It might have. There was probably a few that I'm not sure if you could have welded them up. They might have gone too big. But the general condition of the copper was good. But one particular side was badly quilted, so it was rippled. And I think that was also the side where, as they've cut the stays out, or the stays had been cut, it had been gouged into the copper. So basically, the inner firebox it's had a lot of wear and tear. But as I say, as my engine originally had an all steel boiler and firebox, so that's the way it's going to go again. So not that you'd see it, you'd never know, but it's actually running. But so it's going back to how it was.
So there you go. Well, we're probably going to stay on till about 11:30. So any more railway questions in general about railways, or the railway series and Awdry, come on down. Pop it in the chat. I'm reading this book at the moment. It's very interesting about the TR. Some nice vintage photos, as well as early preservation. A lovely picture there. This is before preservation, 1942, and there is number 2 Dolgok with the vintage with the set minus the brake van, van 5. Go on, Ben. Do you want to tell them why it's missing there?
Van 5 was out due to wear and tear. It needed work doing on the wheel sets, I think the axle boxes as well. The wheels on rolling stock or a locomotive, you have the wheel, and then the outer section is actually a tyre. It's replaceable. And what they do is you heat the tyre up when it's a ring of steel, so it expands. You drop the center of the wheel, where the spokes are and everything, into it, and then you let it cool down, and it shrinks and it nips on and it grips. And then you either rivet it or you make sure that the two are attached with studs and things like that. So the idea is so it doesn't slip on the wheel. And then you put them on a massive lathe and you turn the profile, so you get the flange shape and everything. And they wear
just like tires in the car.
Yeah, and then you, depending on how thick the tyre is, you can get sort of 2 or 3 turns. If you get someone who's good with a lathe, you can get 2 or 3 turns out of it, and then it gets to a point where it gets to what they call the scrapping limit, where it's too thin, you can't reprofile that shape anymore, and you have to cut them and put a new tyre on, reattach, and then reprofile them again. And Van 5 was just to the point where it was the only brake van they had, so it was used on everything. So the poor thing was just, it was a lot of wear and tear. It was just worn out. I think it was sent to the Boston Lodge to do, or the Boston Lodge did the wheel sets and then sent them back. I think it says in one of the books. So it was Fairs to the rescue. Which would have been just before it shut.
What people
that was true.
Don't realise actually is so much of a locomotive is replaced during their working lives, but the actual wheels don't tend to be, because they actually change the tyres. So actually, there's very little wear on the wheels. Yeah,
if anything at all. You know, and even if the wheel ended up with a crack, you could weld them up to a point.
Yeah,
which has been happened plenty of times as well. But the book I'm reading is that one by a chap called Brian Topping. And if you ever do see it, it's well worth a copy. Getting a copy.
Where did he work?
He worked at Bury Shed. In BR days. Yeah, he did. Yeah. And he's also, Brian is, he doesn't come down to the railway very often now, I believe, but he's still an East Lancashire Railway member.
For those who aren't aware, Bury Sheds that Ben has just mentioned is where the East Lancs Railway is, where we both volunteer.
Yeah, and I did a driver experience day back in November 2000 on the Crab when it was in BR livery, so 42765. And the chap who wrote the book, Brian Topping, was the driver for my experience out on the Footplate. And I had a cracking day. It was fantastic. Funny enough, due to work and other circumstances, it's been quite a few years before I went back to the East Lancs, which was 2013. I rejoined. I've been a member ever since, and I'm now a life member, actually. It's just easier doing it that way than trying to remember to renew every year. So, yeah.
Tidmouth Yard, put slightly off topic, Tom, but did you have to cut down the firebox? That's no place. I seem to think that the smoke box wanted to protrude too far forward, and I did have to. I can't remember exactly what I did. I had to do some remedial work to get it to push backwards, so that the smoke box support was pretty much in line. I just looked online because there's quite a few photos of Douglas side-on profile shots, so it allows you to see exactly where it should be. But I'm just I want to get on with number one, but I need the detailing kit, which isn't in stock at the moment from Now Planet. There's a lot of work I could do on it. I could do the majority of the work before without the detailing kit, but I know I'm one of these that once I start something, I want to finish it. And I don't know, it's one I might consider because I could do all the stripping down, all the hard stuff, and then the easy stuff is sort of putting it back together and painting it. But I have got number two waiting to be done, and I have got the detailing kit for that. But it does require more work detailing wise than number one does. But actually, my plan from Wednesday onwards is to get my two Scarlowy coaches painted, numbers 3 and 4. Or actually 3 and 5. It's 3 and 5. But we'll leave that for a discussion another day. But yeah, essentially it's Jemima and Lucy that I want to get painted up, and then there's always more wagon kits to build because I'm really enjoying the Rodney Stenning kits. Go together so easy. You could almost shape the bag and they'd be made for you. They're just nice to build. There's not a lot of flash on the models. Everything lines up. They're a dream to do. I have got the gunpowder van to do. I've got some more. Oh, I've got the trestle ones, the Corris trestles slab wagons to do, which will be quite distinctive. Not something that the Taliclin used, but the Corris used. And of course, we've discussed it before. The Scarlowy is sort of an amalgamation of several of the railways. So, yeah, that's my sort of plan. Callum asks, when do you think Blue Peter will be back in service?
Not for a while, because I have a good friend who works at Crew, and there's still a huge amount to be done. And he's not been working on Blue Peter, he's been working on one of the other ones. So it'll be a while back, I would imagine. But it's going to be one of the next ones out. But as I say, there's still a bit of work to be done. But this lockdown isn't helping at all. So.
Oh, God, goodness no. Heisler, you can never have too many wagons. Absolutely right. No, you can't. Because, you don't have to run them all, but you've got them there for variety. When people come to a show, not seen that wagon before. Oh, no. I tell you what, that's what I'm really looking forward to is with my Scarlowy layout. It's small enough I can transport it. It's to do exhibitions. And look, I'm not trying to pretend I'm Will, but I'm not. But I will sort of happily narrate and talk about what's going on. This is the whatever train it is, talking about the timetable, talking about the Scarlowy Railway, and talking about it in a way that probably some people, there will be some people who will see it, maybe younger people who have only seen TV series and don't know the railway series. And I'm happy to sort of, I don't mean it to sound patronising when I say educate. I don't mean it like that. I mean it in a really helpful way to sort of say, this is how they originally intended to look. Etc., and explain how, because the TR had a uniformed livery look at a time, etc. So yeah, that's how I sort of would look at it like that. So, yeah. Something else I was going to say. I've forgotten now. No. It's gone. It's gone. But yeah, that's my plans this week is to get the TR. Sorry, TR. It's getting late. SR. Best thing you missed this last night when I did my Twitter live stream. I looked at the clock and I said, "Oh, it's." I said it's 1:10 here in the States, and I was just like, "Holy, why is that?" No idea at all in the States.
I know Yorkshire's sort of out there somewhere. You know what I mean? It's like back of beyond, but I don't think it's. Well, it's wrong direction for a start.
Yeah, we're not in a different time zone. Joseph says, I think I read some of the books before I saw the show, as did I. I know I probably sound like a stuck record on this one. I apologize if I do, but it's one of the things I'm really pleased is that I read 2 Scarlowy books before TV series did them. And people know I can get grouchy about TV series, but I honestly mean it. And it's what a lot of people say about books, and then when they become TV and film, they never feel they are as good And yeah, but Ben and I have talked about this with books and things, and when they're not as good. And don't get me wrong, some of the sets for Series 4 were beautiful, but it never lived up to the books for me. And I think some of that's because the books allow you, even with the illustrations there, you get to use a bit of your imaginations still, with this sort of thing.
See, I have to admit the first thing I ever saw was the TV series, because I am old enough to remember it when it came out in 1984.
Yeah, and in fairness, that was what introduced me to the Railway series. But
that's exactly what actually got me into railways in general. So I can't knock it, because that's my background. That's what was there at the time, and it was only as I got older I started getting the Railway series books, because they were all available at the time, and then just proceeded to get like a couple every year. And I used to go to a local model exhibition show. The Tallyclin Railway Northwest group they were always at the show, and that was generally where I got them from. I got a few from the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway, which is, again, is not that far up the road from me. Lakeside and Haverthwaite is, again, not that far away from me in the other direction. And yeah, that's basically where I got my. But once I got into the books, and I was getting that bit older, and I understood that the books came first, and I'm one of these. There's one particular series of books I have. They only ever made the film of the first book, and they totally trashed it. And I get it was a come on, Tom, help me out, an early 70s film or a late 60s film, 633 Squadron. Yeah. The book is fantastic. There's 6 books.
I just said good film.
But the film is absolutely diabolical. They don't even get the main character's name right, for crying out loud. How can you say it's a good film? Apart from the soundtrack, which is fantastic, the way they actually filmed the aircraft, brilliant. The story is diabolical. It's only a snippet of the book. Shite. Sorry, excuse my language, but it is awful. It's atrocious.
My favourite film, though.
Pick a new film, Tom, because it's bad.
I think
I am one of these, because I just see it as, why have you changed the books when there was no need?
I think
that's just me.
For me, also, you see, I'm going against my rule here. I'm talking about TV series, and it's my rule that I go, we don't talk about series. First of all, you've got to understand, Ben and I are miserable old men. We really are. We are grumpy old men. So, you can ignore some of the stuff that we say. But, you can ignore a lot of it if you want to be honest. But, we are grumpy. And we
come out on the Footplate with me and you just chat your head off. And enjoy it.
We do moan about things. And I think both of us, because we are similar age, we both became disillusioned with TV series about the same time, once they stopped using exclusively the Awdry material. But also, we were both getting older. Ben's a few years older than me. 20 years. No. Whoa. I apologise to the viewers. It's all going wrong now, you see.
Sorry, I've got Tourette's and the twitch.
Ben is about 3 years older than me. But also, we were getting older at the time that once Series 3 had come out and stuff, and we discovered the books. And the books do tend to mature as they go along, and then we were getting interested in real railways and things. So I think that's where a lot of, where we started to just become a bit disgruntled with the TV series. But yeah, I think both of us have said that we both read Scarlowy books before the TV series. TV series did it, and that's one of the reasons why I love the red liveries on the engines, particularly because, and I said it last night, I liked it because I used to at a glance it would be like, which engine's that? Is it Scarlowy? Is it Sir Handel? Because from a distance they've both got saddle tanks, so there were two that I had to work out which was which. And as a kid, there were 2 ways I was able to work out which was which. One, square top cabbed on Scarlowy, sort of more of a round top on Sir Handel. Did I say Scarlowy and Sir Handel were the 2 I got mixed up with?
Yeah, you're all right. Carry on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. And then the other thing is, I always remember Sir Handel had a lot more gubbins going on. It's a bit of an English word, I think. Gubbins, like more stuff going on top of his saddle tank, essentially because his dome's further forward, and there's all the pipe work which you see. Which on Skarloey, you've just got the tank essentially, and they were the two ways that I could differentiate between Skarloey and Sir Handel.
I'm dying to make a sarcastic comment.
What? Ah, go on.
Most other people just looked at the illustration and read the name.
Funny, in certain shots you can't see, and I couldn't read.
You read the text.
I was going to be really awkward. I was going to be like, yeah, well, you know what? I couldn't read until I was 10, so you know, I still can't now. I still look at the pictures. No, I'm joking. But no, in certain shots, I'm talking about often. It's often some of the little old engine shots of the sheds where you've got both engines, and actually,
and they're almost head on, and you can't tell anyhow.
Yeah, and the other way is that the other way to tell is that Skarloey generally is smiling and Sir Handel usually frowning, or looking miserable, or looking sly, like he's up to something. So. Yeah, Joseph says about Sunshine about Pick Enterprise and Engines. That used to be my go-to like favorite book, but I'd say it's starting to change really now. I think I've read it so many times that actually it's up there as one of the best ones, I think. But it's there's plenty that I sort of like, you know.
I don't think I could pick. There's different stories out of different books that I like. If I was hard pressed, I would probably. My go-to book used to be Tank Engine Thomas again, because he still is, I suppose, just and so my favourite character, with Edward II, and I liked Thomas the Tank Engine as well. I mean, the best story out of that was Thomas and the Breakdown Train. But as I say, there's more the stories that I really like. And one of my favourite ones is Edward's Exploit. And just the way that Peter Edwards illustrates him with his screwed up face, so you can tell he's in pain. The coupling rod's gone up through his running board and has battered his cab, and it's all twisted, the cab window's broken. And I just think it's such a superb image. You've got the thunder and the dark night. You can tell it says there's thunder and lightning, that sort of thing. And I do think actually it's one of my favourite episodes from the TV series as well. I've got to say that as well. And again, because with the modelling side of things, it's the nighttime shots. Like both Tom and I, we've volunteered at East Lancs and we've done nighttime running, and there's nothing beats it. It's so atmospheric. You can't see a thing. You see signals approach, in the distance, so you can see that that it's a yellow or it's a green or it's a red or whatever. But you can't. You see very little else, especially when you're running in the countryside. To be in stormy weather at night, not being able to see, the rain's coming at you and whatever, and then that to happen. For anyone who ever experienced that in real life, because this is something that did happen, not very often, but it happened. Probably terrifying in daylight, let alone doing it in darkness. But that image, that's the one image that I always think of when I think of that story. And for me, it's one of the best stories.
I'm about to share it.
Oh, smash it! Other stories that I like. I mean, Duke the Lost Engine's a cracking book as well, and so are the Skarloey Railway books.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one indeed.
I mean, what I have to sort of wonder. Sorry, am I just? Oh no, I don't think it's. You can still see that.
Yeah.
It's lucky it's not damaged his firebox.
Yeah, it's quite impressive that it's gone up. Highly unlikely it would do because wheels are in way.
Oh yeah, fair point. I smashed his cab window.
Yeah, taking the side out, taking the splashes out, taking the running board out.
I'm laughing. I like Peter Edwards like figures. Like there's a little kid there who's almost like, oh my goodness, like he's just doing damage. And I like to think that's fireman crouching down, looking at driver, and it's like, it's not good. This.
But I don't think it is it? Because there's fireman road in front dropping sand by hand. I think he's the guy on the left-hand side in the Mac.
Possibly, but he hasn't done that yet. This is when he's just come to a halt, so he hasn't done. To be honest, actually, it's possibly driver that's probably looking at like what the damage is, sort of thing.
Going, oops.
It wasn't why I read the book really that TV series did what it could with it. I'm not knocking them for that, but you never, or you get this, it comes to a stop, something broke, and they take his connecting rods off.
Yeah.
Sorry, coupling rods. This is when you're like, oh my goodness, that's the damage he's done. Based on a real event. Is it the S&C one?
It could have been.
With the
there was one in, is it the Terry Essery book? There was a book both Tom and I have got, Firing Days at Saltley, I think. And he describes on a single line track, the engine slipped violently. One of the coupling rods broke the crank pin, but it actually derailed the loco because it dug into the ballast, lifted it off, and basically slammed it off the track. Thankfully, they weren't going so very fast because they had quite a heavy train on. So you could argue that that's pretty impressive. He's still on the track. But it's as I say, it's happened several times. S&C as well as elsewhere as well.
Just a question from
Tally Clin was another one back in 2013 or 2012 when it broke its coupling rod. Sheared its crank pin and bent the coupling rod, the connecting rod.
The ballast man just put a lovely picture of Luke's set of models for the video. Yeah, it was. It was a photo that I took back in July, and I was scrolling through stuff, and I was hoping Luke might have been able to join us tonight, but I haven't heard back from him. But I hope he's okay. Yes, it was Luke. That is a photo I took, and it's one I was pleased with the shot I've got, and that Tidmouth set that Luke did is absolutely stunning. It was a real joy first time I met Luke actually was down at PR, but yeah, absolutely. So yes, just to make it clear, I wasn't claiming. I wasn't trying to claim that's my model in that. But all that in that shot was Luke's. I just took the photo. That was all. I think we're about done, Ben.
Any last questions?
Yeah, I'll do a 30-second countdown, and then
because we're old enough to remember countdown.
Yeah, and if you don't live in the UK, you'll be like, what else you got? So, well, no, thank you once again for just watching. I just thought I'd do it as a YouTube one. Then I could have Ben join us as well. No, thank you for joining. I've just realised I put it on a countdown for 30 minutes on my phone, and I was like, why is it still on 29? Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you guys.
And we hope you have a good week.
Bye for now.
Cheerio.